in hot from the south.
Copy that. Go 100 meters north from lead one. From lead one. Full hog elements. Good guns, good guns.
All right, what's up, everyone? Finally back. I know it's been a while since I've recorded anything long form. I try and keep the shorts coming daily, but I've been teaching myself how to edit. And today we are talking about the P-63-A5, one of my favorite planes in the game, and a new series that I want to start, basically a history of. So let's get right into it. This is going to be the history of the P-63-A5, as I mentioned before. The Bell P-63 Kingcobra was an improved successor to the P-39 Aircobra, which kind of had a mixed reputation. It had some flaws, and in 1941, the Army Air Force requested a high-performance fighter based on the P-39, but with better speed, improved firepower, and altitude performance. They were really looking for something that could go to high altitude and attack bombers. The P-63 was developed with a laminar flow wing similar to what the P-51 had, which was a massive improvement in aerodynamics. It gave it a more powerful Allison V171093 engine with a two-stage supercharger to enhance that high altitude performance. It retained the 37mm cannon, which is one of the coolest parts of this plane. It has a 37mm cannon in the nose of the plane. Really, really cool, which makes it a really effective ground attack fighter. As well as adding better armor protection for the pilot. The P-63-A5 was an early production model with refinements in engine cooling, radio equipment, and weapon reliability, and it first flew in 1942, and production ramped up in 1943. But unfortunately for the P-63, by then the Army Air Force had decided to go with the Mustang and the P-47 Thunderbolt. And the P-63 saw very little, almost no combat service with the United States. But it did find a suitor. The Soviet Air Force actually used this plane on Lend-Lease, and at that point in the war in 1943, they were looking for an improvement over the Yak-3 and LA-5, and that's where the P-63 stepped in. It was faster with a top speed of 410 miles per hour. It was heavily armored, and thanks to the armor and self-healing fuel tanks, it was more survivable. And by 1944, the P-63 was deployed all over Siberia and the Far East, and primarily it was sent to counter potential Japanese threats, and they weren't really used against the Germans, but they were used in Siberia because the Germans weren't using a ton of high altitude bombers there. So the P-63 was able to be a good interceptor and ground strike aircraft. Most notable battle that the P-63 was involved in was in August of 1945 in the Soviet invasion of Manchuria, where the P-63 was used to escort IL-2s, and it also conducted some low-level strafing on Japanese convoys and strongholds, as well as intercepting retreating Japanese aircraft. Although the Japanese Air Force was weakened by 1945, there were occasional skirmishes between P-63s and Japanese aircraft, primarily the Ki-43 and the Ki-84. And really at the later part of the war. One of the cool things about the P-63 was that it stayed in service for a long time. The Soviets, like I said, they loved this plane, so it stayed in service with them well into the 50s. And with that love came some of the most notable pilots and aces for the Soviets were flying the P-63. Alexander Pushkin, as well as Nikolai Galev and the Glinka brothers, Dmitry and Boris, as well as Alexander Klobov and a few other pilots. But most notably was Alexander Prokishkin, because he got 48 of his 59 kills in the P-63, which was really, really cool. He was regarded as like the second best Allied pilot, like ace pilot, which is really cool that it came in a P-63. While the P-63 never became the famous warplane that Bell Aircraft had hoped for the U.S. military, it proved to be a underrated workhorse for the Soviets. It was one of the few American-designed aircraft that even saw service with the Soviets. And by 1948, it was largely retired. However, it was only retired because of the implementation of jet fighters, the MiG-9 and the MiG-15. Many of the P-63 pilots who flew the P-63 in World War II went on to become jet Cold War aces for the Soviets. The Kingcobra may not have been the most famous fighter of World War II, but in the skies over the Eastern Front in Manchuria, it was a deadly force to be reckoned with. Some of the lesser-known facts of the P-63 was that it actually was utilized by the U.S. for something called Operation Pinball, which was a live-fire aerial gunnery program that the U.S. implemented using the P-63, where it was fitted with special sensors so that other pilots could fire actual ammunition at the plane and get practice dogfighting. And the way it worked is that they had these special frangible bullets that were made of compressed lead and plastic, and they would shatter on impact on the plane, and it would trigger a little flash bulb showing that they had good bombing run there, showing that they had hit the plane. Another little known fact of the P-63 is that it was one of the most heavily armed planes of World War II, with that 37mm cannon, to the point where some of the Soviet pilots even preferred it over the Yak-9T, which had the same or a similar 37mm gun, but lacked the durability of the P-63. Another little known fact is that while the Soviets retired it by the late 40s, some as late as 1950, the French Air Force actually used P-63s all the way into the First Indochina War until 1954, and there were some still in service until the 1960s, making the P-63 one of the longest serving piston engine fighters of the era. That being said, this is a plane that I absolutely have come to love thanks to this game. You'll see in some of the clips that you've been watching and are watching, it's just a fun plane to fly. It's highly maneuverable. They did a really good job modeling it true to life in the game. It can turn pretty quick for what it is, and that cannon will shred any light vehicles, and especially at lower tiers, that 37mm cannon can really do some damage. This model of it, the A5, only carries one 500-pound bomb, whereas some of the later ones, the yellow ones that are painted like the targets that were used in Operation Pinball, can carry up to 3 bombs and some rockets, I think. As we hear a Stuka diving. Some of those other ones can carry a little bit more armament is what I'm getting at. This being a 3.3, the one thing I will say is that I've used this plane in decks all the way up to like 6.0. I mean, that 500-pound bomb will kill stuff if you put it on target, and with a plane this maneuverable, apparently I've got a hole in my left wing, even though my pilot took a shot in the face there, you will be able to get some kills because that bomb, you can put it right where you want it. Here we're going to go over some of the variants of the P-39, P-63. So obviously the P-39 is what the P-63 was developed off of. These are 2.7 planes. The P-63-A5 and the P-63-A10 and C5. The A10 and C5 being the target variants, which is why they're painted yellow. Although in real life, I think they were painted orange. But yellow's pretty close. I'm sure there's a reason they're painted yellow in the game. You can even see it's called the target camouflage. One of the cool things about that is just that it's true to the like history of the plane, like we talked about. And here you can kind of see the armament you can get on the later variants, where you can carry up to 3 500-pound bombs or a 500-pound bomb and some rockets. It ends up being a really good plane for CAS. Like being able to carry a couple bombs, have that cannon, have some rockets. Super effective plane, and like I said, the maneuverability is great. Like really fun plane to fly, and it's hard to lose control in that thing, I'll tell you. I think now we're going to pop over to the Soviet tech tree, where the Soviets actually have a premium P-63-A5 with the Soviet markings and tail numbers. It'd be really cool to see him put like Pukrishkin's skin in there or something, so that you could see his model of the plane. If you Google it, you can actually see it with all the stars that he has on the front of his plane from all of his kills. Yeah, what really cool plane. One that I highly recommend giving a chance to. Oh, that is Pukrishkin's P-39 right there. I spoke too soon. I forgot that I had seen it in there. Yeah, great plane. Anyways, guys, I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate everyone watching. We're almost to 1,000 subscribers. That's a big goal. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button. It does a ton for me, and it's free for you. And until next time, drop in the comments what plane you want to see me do next. Have a good one.